Josh Pate is the host of Josh Pate's College Football Show. You see it every Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday. Go follow him on YouTube. Follow him on social media at Josh Pate CFB. He's on his way to Eugene. I did not realize he was driving. We have caught him in the car. That is a long drive from Nashville to Eugene, Oregon. But that's what Josh Pate does for the love of college football. What is up, Pate? How are you today?
It's a somewhat shorter drive to Nashville International Airport, but the rest of it stands. I am serving the college football community as best I know how.
Yeah, I would recommend the flight over the drive. I've never been to Eugene, but I'm going to recommend the flight over the drive without knowing that.
Yeah, you know, fall foliage season popping in the Pacific Northwest. Temperatures in the low to mid 70s, low humidity. That means drier air, further visibility. So they're going to have a bunch of recruits on campus this weekend, and it could be the best recruiting weekend ever for Oregon because you still get the early season. Hey, it's warm here all the time, beautiful skies, there's no rain, and you get Ohio State in town. And so I don't know that there's a better poster board for college football this weekend.
Before we get into this weekend, excited about that and very jealous that you're going to Austin. I think we all want to go, and we've heard the experience is incredible. Let's go back, though, right there, the city you're in last weekend. As a guy that does this for a living and a guy that is right there in the heart of the SEC, is this – because, you know, I hated to define it as Alabama's worst loss in their history. To me, I think it was the most surprising loss. Like on your surprise scale of just quality ranked football teams over the last 20, 25 years, I mean, where does this fall in? Oh, my God, this is shocking.
It was up there with the top. I don't know off the top of my head that I remember anything. I know a lot of folks this week have brought up the UL Monroe comparison for 50 million different reasons. That's like apples to bowling balls for again, so many different reasons. So this stunned me more. I don't know that I'd call it a worse loss than that. I don't even know how to quantify that. I would just say this stunned me more than that loss that year. But I will say, I don't know if you guys have, I guarantee you have noticed this. You've probably heard all week. You heard all Saturday evening after the game. People praise Pavia and praise Clark Lee and what an improved Vanderbilt program this is. Well, it's so funny. I was listening to people say that, and I agree with them. And then in the very next sentence, they say, but we might need to burn it all down in Tuscaloosa. This is humiliating. This is emasculating. This is terrible. It's what happened is you probably lost to a team you have no business losing to that could also be, dare I say, a smidge better than the public, including me, thought they were. But I am right now, the reason I'm looking out of my window is not nervous energy. I'm 2 blocks away from Broadway right now. I'm in a nondescript parking garage for safety reasons. I could have seen that goalpost taken down Broadway from my office window, and instead I was 700 miles away on a tarmac at Bush Intercontinental in Houston, and I just seen A&M Body Bag, Missouri. And I just thought to myself, you seriously spent 3 days out here, which were good days, when you could have just walked to the upset of the weekend. And I intentionally ignored Ryan Brown's text until today because I thought by Thursday, if I come on the show, the toxicity will have cleared and I don't have to talk about this.
Sorry.
But apparently I'm going to be sucked in. So what Klatt said, they're a glorified Big 12 team. I heard, Legend quits Alabama football altogether. And here I am trying to tell you, maybe Vanderbilt's not so bad. So we've run the full gamut of emotion on the Alabama-Vanderbilt game.
Yeah. I want to take a play out of LT's gambling Bible here. I bet first half, give the points wherever Josh Pate goes this week. So I'm taking Oregon home. First half, whatever the line is, for all my money. His last 2 trips have been Alabama at home against Georgia and A&M at home. It's been blowout city in the first half.
That's a trend.
Pate brings blowouts in the first half.
And we saw Texas run it up as the road team. We saw Miami against Florida run it up as the road team. The only close one, it pains me to say it, the only close one we saw was LSU, South Carolina. And so who knows? I would tell you, I don't see Ohio State or Oregon blowing each other out this weekend. But as you just pointed out, Dunaway, even in the games that don't end up being blowouts, they're blowouts in the first half somehow.
You know, a storyline nobody's talking about really in this game, or I haven't heard it talked about enough, is, Oregon seems to be a little bit off. We have talked about that. They've had some 3 red zone turnovers from Dylan Gabriel in the last 2 weeks. But Ohio State, they finally flexed in the second half against Iowa. I don't know how much they've shown. And Chip Kelly calling these plays now, going back to Eugene with all of those weapons. Do you think there's any way Chip Kelly and this offense have been sandbagging and they've had this game circled and we are going to see wrinkles that nobody has seen this entire year?
Oh, I don't think there's any doubt about that. I mean, if you get caught off guard by that, that's on you if you're Oregon. Sark said the same thing about Venables and Oklahoma, and they have played teams this year. He said, we have to be ready for what they haven't put on film. Well, that times 10 in this game for Oregon with Ohio State coming to town. That's why I also hesitate, if people want to talk about how they've been sort of sleepwalking in first halves of games. Well, I don't know if you guys have played Akron or Western Michigan before, but you can kind of afford to do that if you're Ohio State. And it doesn't matter how much you preach nameless, faceless opponent, next game, biggest game. Everyone knows what those games are. They're tune-up games. And even to that extent, Michigan State and Iowa did not have the offensive athletes to be able to hang with them, even if they did a halfway decent job defensively. So, yes, they haven't incorporated the tight ends in the passing game. There haven't been many designed runs for Will Howard at quarterback position. There's so much. Everyone knows, there's so much more. They've got depth and versatility at the receiver position. So on one hand, yes, that stresses Oregon a lot more. But then the counter to that is, I think most of us who have watched Ohio State, including their own fans, would say if there was going to be a weakness on this team, it was going to be offensive line. Offensive lines look good so far. Offensive line now gets thrown into the biggest blender it's been thrown in so far this year against a deeper, talented, more multiple front in Oregon. For the record, they'll also do that again in a couple of weeks in State College against Penn State. So we've learned about Alabama. We've learned about Georgia. Two of them we hadn't learned about yet, Texas and Ohio State. And especially Ohio State really gets pressure put against that dam this weekend. So I imagine there are going to be some cracks somewhere. I really don't know once we get to the end of October if we will call ourselves having an elite team in college football. We got to see them tested, and that starts this weekend for Ohio State.
You're beloved by a number of people, including coaching staffs everywhere. What are you hearing about? It seems like I described it as Oregon. It's like one spark plug just isn't firing in their engine. It just seems to be just a beat off. What are you hearing about that Oregon offense, and do you think that it will kick in this weekend?
Yeah, they believe that is all predicated on having their offensive line healthy. They look at and I look at the second half against Michigan State last week, started to kick it in gear a little bit, still had turnovers in the red zone though. In a weird way, I'd be kind of glad that happened against Michigan State if it has to happen, because then I get to emphasize it and get guys' attention in advance of facing the best defense we'll probably play all year in Ohio State. But that offensive line's been everything for them. And, they lost the right tackle earlier in the season, so they get healthy now. And the second he went down, I hit him up and said, what's the situation here? And they kind of circled conference play. We think we'll get him back for conference play. And that was the kind of situation where right tackle goes out, but then you mix and match and guys move all around. So it wasn't just a plug and play, let's put our two in. Having said that, okay, so you just beat Michigan State. That's wonderful. We could say the same thing about either team. This is kind of the what have they done, who have they played bowl, to which I always counter, well, that alone is not evidence that a team is suspect. Like if you're Usain Bolt and you go enter a middle school field day competition and you smoke all the little middle schoolers, it would be dumb for me to look at Usain Bolt and say, well, he's not good because he hasn't raced anyone. Well, that's true. He didn't race anyone. He's also a world-class sprinter, the likes of which we've never seen. He's like an alien. Ohio State could be that. I don't think Oregon has looked like that yet, but Oregon, kind of like Texas A&M, is the kind of team that started out slow, but they've got a top 10 talent roster. Even A&M has about a top 10, top 12 talent roster. So you always reserve in your mind, at least I do, the ability or the possibility that they're kind of like a rubber band that's been pulled back, just haven't been let go yet. If they get let go, there is extreme upward mobility potential. With A&M, we saw it last week against Missouri. With Oregon, maybe we see it this weekend.
I want to ask you more about A&M. Josh Pate is with us. Josh Pate College Football Show right there on YouTube. Go subscribe to his YouTube channel. Do what we ask you to do for us. Give it a thumbs up. Set your alerts so you know when he's live. Follow him on Twitter at Josh Pate CFB. He's on his way to Eugene, Oregon for that big Ohio State-Oregon game. You just saw A&M, though, in their finest moment so far under Mike Elko, just blowing the doors off Missouri. This guy to my left said all summer that A&M Texas game will have playoff implications. for both teams, not just A&M ruining it for Texas. It will have implications for both teams. He baited me into that, and then I watched him lose I watched him lose to Notre Dame, and then I'm like, oh, Lance's such an idiot. What's he thinking? I'm back now. I'm back. I've looked at the rest of their schedule. He's going to be right, I think. When you left that game, do you feel like we get to the end of the year and A&M's got a shot at the playoffs against Texas?
Yeah, I do. I wish I could say no. I mean, I love a good disagreement with Lance, but it's not happening here.
You would rather have the venom and everything going on in that game, a game we hadn't seen since 2011. I mean, I can't even imagine what the ticket price is going to be on that thing.
Make it as big as possible. We haven't seen it in too long.
I think that at the beginning of the year, I came on this program, actually. Remember, we were talking about some of the things you were most looking forward to, and everyone had their take. And one of mine was, I don't think it's occurred to the general public yet that Texas versus Texas A&M is back. They knew it was on the schedule, but like we were just talking about, there are 19-year-old kids or whatever that do not understand a fraction of the vitriol that goes into that rivalry. Remember when Texas went back to Arkansas a couple of seasons ago, and how completely rabid, like out of its mind that place was? Well, that's Kyle Field times like 5 when Texas goes in there this year. So that was going to be the case anyway. It's just that maybe we started to think, okay, it's going to be a case where A&M builds that up as their Super Bowl because there's not much left to play for in terms of postseason. If you throw postseason implication in that mix, you keep the same intensity of the rivalry. You just get the entire nation's focus on that rivalry. And then start to think about this. Do we think the Iron Bowl is going to be a nationally relevant Iron Bowl that weekend? I'm not sure it will be. Ohio State and Michigan. We could see Ohio State favored by between 2 and 3 touchdowns. USC Notre Dame. Notre Dame is on the press, or USC's on the precipice of suffering their 3rd loss this weekend. They're a dog at home. So you start to think about that rivalry weekend and the games that could have the spotlight. And all of a sudden, this A&M Texas game is like it's right there. Like once Wigman started throwing the ball the way he was, I went from the field to the press box because, you got to get the halftime hot dog. So I go up there and it's already a blowout. So the 3rd quarter, I stayed up there and I was kind of walking around talking to some folks. And the number one topic of conversation in the press box at Texas A&M was the Texas game. Yeah. Like that they were already looking ahead because they figure, oh, we can throw the ball. Oh, well, we can beat anyone on our schedule. And they're right. They can. And I was in that facility Friday. Not only were they pretty convinced Wigman was going to go, which I don't think the opposition was convinced of, by the way, but also there is that kind of this bottled up intensity that team has about him, because there's been a lot floated around about him personally, not in terms of his on-field work. And I kind of think it was like shaking up a Coke and then they twisted the cap on it against Missouri. Now, the follow-up is you go into the bye week. Okay, how do you come out of it? It's the same question I have about LSU this weekend. You went into the bye. How do you come out of it?
Yeah. For Texas A&M, they get to come out of it with Mississippi State, so it's a good ease back into reality. We are a corn dog league. We've let these corny dog folks in Texas and Oklahoma this weekend out at the State Fair. Longhorns look like the best team in the country. They're number 1. How does Venables scheme up to win this game? Do they have enough offense to win this game, Josh?
I don't think they do. I mean, if you were to judge this game on paper or on what you've seen so far from both those teams, this should be a double-digit win for Texas. So then there's the great big inhale, because we know what the follow-up. The follow-up is, but this is college football. So fresh off the heels of the upsets we saw last weekend, I mean, how terrifying is it to say a team should be winning by double digits in a rivalry game? Like I said, Sark earlier this week kind of put it best. He said, we've got to be ready for what they haven't put on film. And if Texas gets off to a 10 or 14-0 lead, I don't really care what they haven't put on film, because at that point you can sit on the ball. OU's probably not catching up. Having said that, last year I was at this game. Turnovers end up costing Quinn Ewers in Texas, and it was Dylan Gabriel at that point that ends up winning, I think, a 34-30 game, and OU was the underdog that day, not by 14.5, but they were the underdog. You just have to drag this game into quicksand. It's the same way that you started to feel about the Bama Vanderbilt game past weekend. Bama's favored big, but you can feel a game starting to be pulled into the quicksand. Now, even in the second half, you got to have some things go your way, but the difference is the talent profile of this OU team is 3 straight top 10 recruiting classes. So they're not good at quarterback. That's why we discount them. Their offensive line's got to play the game of the year. That's why we discount them. But
if it's going to happen, it would happen in a weekend like this. I have my doubts, but I have my doubts that all that stuff could happen last weekend and it happened. So forgive me if I just go ahead and tune in anyway.
I said this multiple times last week. I didn't think we were talking about Missouri A&M enough. I thought that was the game that had playoff implications, maybe an elimination game, maybe whoever won that game, the probability really jumped up to go to a college football playoff. And I know in the offseason, Ohio State, Oregon was the game everybody was talking about, but they were also talking about Ole Miss, LSU. Ole Miss will first get challenged when they go to Baton Rouge. We're going to know more about these teams. Now nobody's talking about this game. It's only the second time in 60 years both of these teams have been ranked in the top 15 when they're facing each other, and I believe this is an elimination game.
I think it could be the game of the weekend, too. So let me preface this by saying I think LSU is going to win the game outright. It was the biggest situational mismatch of the preseason. In June, in July, like we did a segment on this game on our show, which is really weird because it was multiple months away. It's almost, I don't know if I would call it like a dereliction of duty in the league office to make a schedule like this, but if you just talk this out, LSU has not left home in a month. They're coming off a bye. They played a G5 team before they went into the bye. You could not be more rested and prepared. This is Ole Miss's 7th consecutive game. They are playing their second leg of a back-to-back road stretch, which is rare anyway in college football. And then they go on the road, and now we don't know if Trey Harris is going to play. Now, no one knew that in the preseason, but that's just added on. And Trey Harris has more production than I think the next 3 receivers on that team combined. So I think it sets up horrifically for Ole Miss. I know they're favored, and this is so stupid to say. I'm going to be mildly surprised if they find a way to go in there and win it. I just flat out think the wrong team's favored. I take LSU on the money line. I think LSU is going to win the game.
Josh Pate with his play of the weekend. You get the rest of the season free if he misses this one. Josh Pate, CFB, is Josh Pate's college football show. See him all over social media from Eugene. See his show Sunday night on YouTube. Josh Pate's college football show on YouTube.
Underrated Friday night Instagram Live, though.
Okay.
I've tuned in 4 straight weeks trying to get my question for a pick in. He has so many questions firing at him. He's yet to notice celebrities in his chat. So.
Dunaway, why don't you just text me yours ahead of time? Because you have the hotline.
Hey, self-proclaimed celebrity there. You missed that.
No, I mean, I see other celebrities in there.
If he texts you and you read it, he can't complain that you don't read it. So that's why he doesn't text you.
I want it to happen organically, man. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. I understand.
All right, go give his YouTube shows a thumbs up. Subscribe, set your alerts. Thank you, Pate. Safe travels, buddy.
All right. Appreciate it, guys.
All right, we'll see Josh Pate with us on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline.